All right, everybody, it's the Combatcast with the man called Dave and Chevy Rooney. We're going to preview Blanchfield versus Barber today. This is episode 205. And if you like us and you're just finding out about us, please subscribe. We'd appreciate it. We're going to talk MMA here. The channel does pro wrestling too, so check us out. But before we get into today's fights, Chevy, why don't you tell me what we got coming up for future episodes?
All right, June 7th, UFC 316, Dvalishvili versus O'Malley 2 for the bantamweight belt. That's in Newark, New Jersey. So we'll talk about it more next week, but I did see some training footage from Sean O'Malley, so I'm hoping for a good fight. And going on from there, June 14th, UFC Fight Night, Usman versus Buckley, 10 p.m. from Atlanta. Buckley taking on another old lion from the welterweight division. And then June 21st, UFC Fight Night, Hill versus Roundtree Jr. was rebooked. That's a 3 p.m. card from Azerbaijan.
Interesting.
So we like those Middle East cards because we get to watch them in the middle of the day.
They're nice and early. That's always a plus. Always a plus. Always a plus. All right, let's get right to it. Pretty quick episode. Not much going on this week. Barber, Blanchfield this week, UFC Fight Night. We're going to talk the main event and co-main event before we do any other fights stick out on this card.
Kurt Holoba versus Jordan Levitt. That's a pretty good matchup. And then number 3, Ketlin Vieira versus number 5, Maycee Barber. That's on the prelims, even though they're pretty high ranked, but that's where the women's divisions are at currently. It's just very top heavy. So, and then
did she fight at
she's fought a couple. She fought at featherweight, and now featherweight seems to be gone. So this is a bantamweight fight. She's had fights in both divisions.
Yeah, but I'm saying so she's might have a size advantage here too, but she's been fighting bantamweight for a bit. Yeah,
Ketlin's pretty big too, so I don't know if she will, but this is a pretty good matchup. But and then also local fighter here, Billy Ray Goff. He's got some fights in the UFC. He's right before the co-main event here. He's fighting Ko Suk Hyun, who is a knockout artist coming from the Contender Series. So both guys are. So let's go Billy Goff. We're rooting for him, obviously. And let's get in this co-main event. Pretty good matchup here, I guess. Number 7, Mateusz Gamrot versus Ludovit Klein.
All right, Klein is 23-4-1, 9 KOs, 8 subs, 6 decisions. He's won 6 out of his last 7, so he's been on a roll. Gamrot is 24-3-1, 8 KOs, 5 subs, 11 decisions. He's won 3 out of his last 4. He's just coming off a split decision loss to Dan Hooker. Obviously, no shame in that. I would say Gamrot's probably had the stiffer competition here.
Oh, yeah.
And so for that reason, strength of schedule, I like Gamrot in this. But this should be a fun fight. Just looking at the stats, even, and their records, the amount of knockouts and subs they have between them. I feel like confidently these guys probably feel pretty good wherever they go. They both had plenty of decisions too. So, this isn't, I think, going to be a question of who tires out. I'm going to say it probably goes decision, and I'll go Gamrot.
Yeah, pretty evenly matched, like skill-wise, but like you mentioned, strength of schedule is huge for a Gamrot. So I don't really understand why this fight got booked. I don't think that Klein's done enough to warrant a shot at number 7, even if Gamrot just lost to Dan Hooker, like you said, a split decision. So I think it's a tough ask for Ludovit. So I'm going to agree with them. I'm going to go with Gamrot by decision. I think he'll probably dominate, actually. So, all right, moving on. Main event, number 4, Erin Blanchfield versus number 5, Maycee Barber.
Maycee Barber is 14-2, 6 KOs, 2 subs, 6 decisions. She's on a 6-fight win streak. And she's been around for a little bit now. She's very talented. Erin Blanchfield, though, 13-2, 2 KOs, 4 subs, 7 decisions. She's won 10 out of her last 11 fights. And really, her only loss was a decision to Manon Fiorot, who just ended up fighting for the title against Shevchenko. So, And that was a close fight. And I would imagine that Blanchfield, is making adjustments. And I'd have to, honestly, I'd probably consider her the favorite in this against Barber, although I like Barber a lot. Barber's also one, though, that's constantly making improvements. This is probably another matchup that's going to go to decision. I'm going to go Barber, even though like my mind is telling me Blanchfield will probably pull this off. Something about Maycee's just coming into this. I don't know. I just got a good feeling about her, and it's just a gut feeling. So I'm going to go Maycee Barber by decision.
I'm a fan of both ladies, but I've been saying for a couple of years that I think that Blanchfield's going to be champ. So
yeah,
the winner of this is probably getting a title shot. So I'm going to pick Erin. Wouldn't be upset if Maycee won, but I do think Erin's going to get it. I think it'll be a somewhat close decision, but I'm going with Erin Blanchfield.
All right. So Blanchfield. Yeah, I mean, I don't even have a good reason. I honestly think she's just had more success, but again, I think both ladies, they're constantly making adjustments. So, and that's why I think this will be a fun fight. We'll see. Well, I'm with you. I think it'll be a relatively close fight, but and probably the winner is going to get a title shot at some point very soon.
Yeah, tough Apex card here to go through. So,
yes,
we're really looking forward to that pay-per-view next weekend.
And the pay-per-view looks great. So can't wait to get here next week to talk about that. But that's going to be it for a short holiday episode. Guys, we appreciate you joining in. Chevy, why don't we tell people what we got coming up one more time at least?
All right. June 7th, UFC 316, Dvalishvili versus O'Malley 2 from Newark, New Jersey. And then June 14th, UFC Fight Night Usman versus Buckley from Atlanta. And then June 21st, UFC Fight Night Hill versus Roundtree. That's an early 3 p.m. card from Azerbaijan. All
right, guys. That was just a quick little holiday episode for you. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and tune in next week where we will preview the entire main card for UFC. Is it 316 you said, Shay?
Yep.
316. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next week.